All right. Well, as we come up to the 5 o'clock hour here on the East Coast with our 4 hour or 4.5 hour seminar here, I wanted to reintroduce Jeff and Claire as I do this by candlelight. Reintroduce Jeff and Claire to really share some of the takeaways from the session, all of the sessions today, particularly over the last two where they were concurrent. So those that sat in one didn't hear from the other. But really great job, Jeff and Claire and the entire team. I learned a lot as I sat through facilitating these sessions and really look forward to learning more and hearing more about what you see as the key takeaways over the last 4 hours. How can you boil that down into 15, 20 minutes for us?
Thank you, JD. First, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was told we had 3 hours for the key takeaways.
Well, you can have 3 hours, but I'm not going to be here.
All right, so we won't take 3 hours. We will take 15 minutes. Really appreciate all of your interest in this and being here with us today. Claire and I just wanted to distill down some of the key takeaways. We know you've seen this slide before. All I want to say about this slide is please keep in mind that where you fall in this continuum of outcomes and continuum of results is really dependent upon operational performance and strategic initiatives that you undertake. And so the strategic options that you select based on where you are, will be informed by where you're moving. So for instance, if you're in that, we really don't have sustainable performance, we're not in danger of closing, but we really do need to do something to improve our operational performance, understanding the gap in performance, and then defining a plan for addressing that. So at a minimum, you can move to the upper quadrant or upper quartile of that strategic drift category and potentially move into the right side categories over time. What you do want to avoid is having limited options that force your hand into a bad partnership or worst case result, closure. So just a useful construct here. Other thing I just want to say very briefly, to understand strategic risk, it's imperative that you look at trends over 5 to 7 years. Simply looking at data from prior year to current year or prior year to budget is not going to give you the context you need to understand how your strategic risk profile may be changing. And it's important to look at risk factors across a continuum, those four fields: financial, operational, market, and value. At least in some way, even if you don't do all of them, have some markers for each of those quadrants and look at it over 5 to 7 years. You've also seen this slide before. I think the only thing I want to really share about this slide, and Claire may have some things she wants to add, is that it's important to understand that there are opportunities for performance improvement. These, and our focus when we work with clients, is not about slashing and burning. It is about how can we grow? How can we add to what's available to build financial and operational strength in the organization? And so, our track record over 30 of these engagements, I think, demonstrates that there are performance improvement options within rural and within small critical access hospitals that are real and do generate real opportunities and performance gains. Did you want to say anything, Claire, on that slide?
I was just going to say, I think the key thing there too is that, when you look at those performance improvement initiatives and they've been broken down with 33% really happening and reducing out migration, that's keeping patients local. That's keeping patients at, your organization, whether it's a critical access hospital or rural hospital. That's our goal, is to get more patients to come to you and seek care with you.
Great. A couple takeaways from the county and district hospital presentation. As Trent shared with you, I thought it was a really great insight that it's not so much wrong decisions that get boards in trouble. It's a process that does not adhere to statutory or legal guidelines. And that's what gets boards in trouble. So I think that's a really great insight there. I think the other thing that I would just implore folks to. And I think that the example that we gave at the end of that, where we compared and contrasted two separate communities that had just incredible dysfunction and conflict between the hospital board and, in both cases, a district board. And in one case, that conflict had gone back more than a decade. They both took different paths, and those different paths were really characterized by the leaders in place at the time. And the community that kind of embraced, let's put the past behind us and let's develop a trajectory for the future that's going to best serve this community. And let's do that together, and let's develop a common vision for the future. That scenario was really a critical ingredient in that, was the fact that you had two relatively new, very effective, very accomplished leaders on each board that were willing to do that. In the community that didn't do that, you did not have the same leadership. In fact, it was adversarial and never got out of that mode. And everything they did just compounded that adversarial approach. Each board had a separate advisor. There never was a focus on a common vision going forward. It was about winning. And in this case, that community's case, their hospital district board won. They took over, terminated the lease, took over the hospital, and forced a bankruptcy. That triggered a fire sale of the asset, and it really degraded their local delivery system. Again, two very, very contrasting and starkly different outcomes and processes. And I have a strong bias as to which one should be preferred and best practice. So I think those are the two findings there. Claire, do you want to share this one?
Sure. I think, a lot of these concepts we've talked about knowing your organization's risk profile, but I think a key one is that depending on how stressed or de-stressed you are as an organization, good management alone may not save you as a distressed hospital, where you're going to have to make some tougher choices when it comes to strategic options, and educating yourself on those options available to you, including Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is restructuring, where your hospital stays open and is fully operational, but on the back end you're working on shedding enough debt to secure a partner potentially, and working with your team to work through that process. It's not a Chapter 7 liquidation where the hospital closes and, if you're lucky, you can reopen it, which that's a tough hill to climb. This is Chapter 11 restructuring bankruptcy, which is different. Making sure you're educated on that topic and are able to speak to it is important. Again, bankruptcy isn't necessarily a liquidation, but it's a vehicle for a fresh start. And when combined with performance improvement initiatives and a potential partnership process, it can become a really useful tool.
Great. So I'm glad we're finishing. I think we're finishing on this slide. I think it's really important. We call this the four no-nos, and no is in KNOO, KNOW, excuse me, and no is in NO. So the majority of rural hospitals in a partnership, we find the system is suboptimizing the rural hospitals. They're either improperly evaluating performance and then underinvesting in that hospital, but they're missing value. That's the key thing. Related to that, no one's going to stumble across your value unless you quantify it and you show the path to operationalizing it. You need to identify win-wins with the partner, and you really need a partner that understands your value and can understands how to evaluate a rural affiliate. So you see some of those key points in there, and we've made that earlier. So the four no's or four no-nos, you got to know your risk profile, you got to know your value. No one else is going to promote your value, and there's no risk-free options. Sadly, there's no risk-free options. The name of the game is to mitigate risk. The best risk mitigation tool out there is operational performance improvement. But if you are partnering to mitigate risk, you better find a partner that is strategically aligned and has the capabilities and capacity to address your needs and address your constraints and your objectives, and that they have the right structure that fits those needs and those objectives, and you have contractually enforceable terms, all of which help mitigate that partner risk equations. So I've just stolen my own thunder here a little bit, but it's probably worth repeating. I mean, these are words that if you follow them, you're a lot less likely to find yourself in a bind, and your organization would be well served. There's no substitute for operational performance, regardless of strategic option. Time's never a neutral factor, and in fact, time is an incredibly valuable commodity. If your organization's at risk, the benefit of acting early is huge. If you wait too long, you may never recover. And you either are looking at a kind of fire sale, hoping that there's a white knight that will come along, but oftentimes the terms reflect the fact that you're in a dire strategic and operational position. You got to know your value, do the homework. You've also got to know your risk profile. There are no risk-free strategic options. And as we've alluded to, and this would be a mantra for anybody that's thinking about partnering, partner, got to find the right partner. And by right, we mean strategically aligned with the capabilities and resources to address your needs. You've got to have a competitive process. You've got to have the right structure that meets your needs and contractually enforceable terms. I think, my gosh, we've all made it to the finish line. I just want to thank everyone. I hope that this was valuable and useful, and really appreciate everybody for attending and being a part of this. And especially want to thank Claire and JD and Trent and Jennifer and Julie and Wade for being part of this institute. Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Cheers.